Good afternoon, everyone. It is Friday, March 6th, 2020. It's a beautiful afternoon. I just wanted to highlight some news stories. So first of all, we have Republican Congressman of Colorado, Ken Buck. Joe Biden, the presidential frontrunner, was threatening to team up with Beto O'Rourke and figure out how to take our weapons away from us. So Ken Buck responded by telling them he dares them to come show up at his office and try to take his AR-15 away from him. He then poses with his AR-15 in his office, which is kind of funny because he's just kind of an old man. But anyways, just keep in mind, I realize a lot of people have gotten hurt over time, but it is not like what Joe Biden said, where there's been 150 million Americans hurt in the last few years. That's not true at all. And somebody looked at the numbers, it was more like 150,000 or something like that. 90% of them were suicide. If you don't have a gun to commit suicide, there are many other ways people will kill themselves. So that isn't going to stop suicides. It certainly isn't going to stop criminals from shooting up mass crowds. If anything, it'll make it easier for people to move under the radar with weapons. It's stupid. All it's going to do is make criminals out of good people who just want the right to defend their home and their country. It's about the equivalent of our guns are literally to defend ourselves against a tyrannical government or an insurgency or a foreign invasion. To give up our weapons to our own government is the equivalent of having a fight for control with another military, and that military tells you have to give up your guns before they'll fight you because they don't want to get hurt. Of course you're not going to do that. It's stupid. So anyways, glad to hear that there is a congressman who is doing what's right and speaking up. And I pray to God there are a lot more Americans, especially in politics and law enforcement, that are also willing to stand up for what's right. So also a quick update on the president's visit to the CDC. He apparently had said he was canceling his trip due to an employee there that possibly had the coronavirus, and he has now changed his mind and is rescheduling his trip, as far as I've heard anyways. He says that he would like to go visit there, so he will be likely to do that. And I will bring some more updates on the virus here shortly. Next, I would like to address something that is deeply concerning. At a rally for Bernie Sanders, some idiot stood behind him and unrolled a Nazi flag. Now the news is trying to spin it that it's not his own supporters or his own party that's behind it. Here's the reality. There's either one of two things going on there. I don't personally know the whole story, and I'll look into it further. But as far as I can tell, they're either trying to expose who the Democrat Party is and who they represent. Bernie Sanders, he is a Jew, but so were the Nazis. They were German Jews. So that they're trying to swing it that he's somehow being attacked because he's a Jew by the Nazis. It's not true. He actually acts on behalf of the Nazis. The deep establishment, or the deep state establishment, the shadow government, those are literally what happened to the Nazis after the war. That's who they became. They have built up a government alongside of all of our governments globally. So Bernie Sanders stands for socialism and communism. Guess what? Nazis were for socialism and communism. The Republicans are not. So this was not anybody on the right somehow trying to promote Nazism. This was somebody trying to expose the Democrats for who they are by putting a flag behind Bernie Sanders. Or the other possibility is it's one of the Democrats themselves who are trying to expose Bernie as a Nazi because they want Joe Biden to win. But the fact is, no matter who you pick, the same puppet masters are pulling their strings. They have the Democrat politicians have absolutely no control over their party. They are puppets, and that's it. That's why it looks like a big giant circus during the debates. They don't care. They will flip and do whatever it takes to get your vote, and then they'll do whatever they're told by their Nazis. So anyways, I just want to make that clear that those Nazi pushes have nothing and anti-Semitism have nothing whatsoever to do with the right. There is nobody on the right that is pushing that kind of behavior, symbolism, attitude. I admit there's a lot of undesirable people on the right, but I've never seen any acts of racism, Nazism, or anything else like that. So, just to be clear, the Democrat Party is represented or is controlled by a Nazi party. They have been fighting for a global empire since the Roman Empire fell. It's the same people. And then they bring on other people of like-minded groups of people to help push their global agenda. So if you vote for anybody in the Democrat Party for president, just to warn you, that's when you're going to see the real Nazi movement of eugenics and AI gods, and it's going to get bad. So just be clear when you make that choice. Now, Elizabeth Warren also points out a problem with Bernie Sanders' campaign, which I do realize a lot of it is just attacks to shut him down, but that doesn't make the accusations, totally untrue, although coming from Elizabeth Warren's mouth, I get it. But we've all seen the behavior coming from the Democrats since 2016. They have had riots instead of peaceful protests, personal attacks instead of rallies, direct attacks like on people's homes and lives, personal type attacks. But anyways, Antifa is being blamed, I guess, on the socialists that like Bernie Sanders. So right there, just as an example, that alone shows you it isn't about Bernie Sanders. It's about the kind of people that support his movement. You have socialists. They have tribal mentalities. They expect you to do whatever the whole group expects out of you. They don't respect free will or free thought or independence. They don't want small government. They want the government to control and to be in control of everything. So another thing to consider when you're voting for a Democrat, despite what you think of the Republican Party right now, they're the ones who are standing for America. And if you haven't caught on yet, this isn't just some mean political game that's going on here. This is a fight for a country. It's America, independent, national, constitutional republic. We are an independent nation from the rest of the world. We live by a very specific constitution that was built on God and the God that is the God of gods, not just any God, and built on the Ten Commandments, which by doing that allows us to follow the laws of our God ahead of our governments, which is that gives us free will and independence. We give up that right, then the rules and the laws will get way worse, way more strict, way more difficult. Our basic 10 commandments, those are our laws. If you follow those, you'll be just fine. You break those, you give in to man's laws. And when you have to follow those, it's more than 10. It goes into the hundreds. So, or probably more. It gets way more strict. Your punishments are way worse. So we do not want socialism in this country. We reject communism, and that's what Bernie Sanders supports. So just another thing to consider when you go to the voting polls. And also, just a little something to add to that, we do not support violence. People are accusing people on the right of being violent. It's not true. The fact is, there's a lot of people you don't like, have strong opinions. I'm sure there's some racism and prejudice and discrimination. I'm sure there's a lot of... I can see all the things that people wouldn't like. But the fact is that they do respect our Constitution, and they respect our God-given rights and our free will. And that's what's important right now. And even if you choose Joe Biden, excuse me, even if you choose Joe Biden, he's not as much about socialism and communism. He just does whatever people want him to do. Whoever's going to give him the most money, the most votes, he'll tell you whatever you want to hear. And then, just like Bernie Sanders, he'll tell you what you want to hear. And then he'll do whatever he's told to do. They have no control over the things that they're claiming. And they don't make claims that they can actually live up to. So, again, keep that in mind. We're not fighting over... This isn't a fight over personalities. This is a fight over America, American independence as a nation of multiple colors and races, the melting pot of all different kinds of people and ideas, independent minds, and the ability to succeed for everybody, versus globalism, where you have total government control over the entire world in the hands of a select few people that you're not choosing to elect. You might elect people within your country, but the fact is, with globalism, you've got other people from around the world who are taking your rights away from you, and you don't have any choice. And you're not electing those people who are taking your rights. They're just doing it. Like censorship, your right to defend yourself, your right to due process, etc. So that's globalism. What you see the Democrat Party doing, that's globalism. Antifa, that is actually what the Nazis created. The KKK, the Democrats, globalists created that. They want to create chaos and distrust among all of us. We need to learn to unite as the people versus the government, not the representatives versus the representatives who are all represented by the same people. That makes no sense. So think it through and do your research. Okay, and now a little bit about the peace deal in Afghanistan. So the president has been trying pretty much since he got into office to get our soldiers home. You would think that would be a simple thing. But here's the fact. There's proxy wars going on, right? Other countries started these wars, and they created groups of terrorists to fight their proxy wars. And then they called us in to help bring an end to it, because when you take a bunch of criminally minded people and you give them some control, well, now they've got you wrapped around their finger, and they're not gonna respect you. So, anyways, these other countries that are supposed to be our allies create these wars, destroy these people's lives, their land, their home, and they do it in the name of all kinds of things. But the reality is they want global control. And they will tell you whatever you need to hear to get you to fight for them or to fight on behalf of their agenda. And then they'll turn around and pull the rug out from under you and leave you with nothing. Then all these terrorists become extremely radical because they got screwed over by whatever countries made these deals with them. So then our allies call us in to clean up their mess. They ask us for money to fund the cleanup of their mess. And then they use us like a police force to hold the territory that they're trying to claim or steal from these people. And the president is just trying to get us out because he understands that it's a proxy war. It doesn't matter what he does, how much he does to make things right. What we do, we can wipe out all the terrorists. We can fix the problems that they claim to be having. And the globalists will just initiate a new war, a new cause to get new people to fight for them. And it just never ends. And just like a child, you just got to take it away. Okay, we have to pull ourselves out. Without us there, they can't force their will on those countries the way that they have been. And part of the reason we keep seeing attacks every time we try to make a peace deal is because our globalist allies that we have allied with, I should say, initiate those attacks. They pay for people to do those attacks, or they have their own groups that they pay. And they're paying them oftentimes with the taxpayers' money of America or other countries. And then we don't even know where that money is being spent because it's actually being funneled to the terrorist organizations and their weapons. So the best way to end this is to just say no more and pull them out and let these people sort out their issues without forcing our will on them. I do agree that they need help. There's human rights issues going on there, but this isn't the way to do it. Claiming war and forcing your will and your way of life and your way of governing onto other countries that aren't even anywhere near your own country, no, that's not going to work. Nobody is going to give in to being forced. They have to have free will. They have to have independence. And they have to choose as a people to give that to themselves. We cannot force it. A lot of those people do not believe in the same things that we believe in. They do not care about the same things that we care about. So trying to force our way of doing things is silly. So anyways, I pray to God that we can bring our soldiers home and we don't continue to take part in this war. If you listen to some of the stories these soldiers have to tell about this war, it's horrifying. You know, I remember one soldier said, under Obama's administration, said he thought he was going over to the Middle East to help against terrorism and to help fight these people. But instead, he was allied with other terrorists to fight other terrorists. And then he was told that if he started to get surrounded by anyone, or he felt like the wrong kind of people were approaching him, no matter who was around him, women, children, people that are friendly, it doesn't matter, that he's supposed to do a circular fire and just turn and shoot everybody around him. That's the kind of things they're doing to people out there. There's other soldiers that have talked about knowing that children were in their homes being molested and raped by their parents, and they weren't allowed to do anything about it. They're just supposed to do nothing. So why are we there? If our soldiers are being traumatized by what they're seeing and aren't able to do anything to help where they're at, then this idea isn't working. And we need to step out of the way, regroup, and think of an effective way of helping these countries and their human rights issues without forcing our will of government and religion and our way of life on them. So I say, bring them home. There should always be a base or an embassy or something established, sure, in those areas, That's just common sense, but we don't need to be in the middle of everybody's business, taking over other people's territories and helping our enemies take over other people's territories. Anyways, nor should our money that you pay, when you pay taxes, you're paying it to have the needs of our country met and our people, our citizens, our children, our elderly, people that can't work. That's what your taxes are literally for. When they have to use it for war, it takes away from what we have here, and that's fine. But it's got to end at some point. It shouldn't be ongoing. The Democrats literally want us to stay in the Middle East and to force our way of life on them for the next 100 years. They've actually said that. Or at least a couple hundred years, multiple generations. They want to force our way of life on them and use our troops to do it. And we're not okay with that in this country. So I'd say bring them all home. Okay, and finally, I'll wrap this up with an update on the COVID-19 virus. Currently, in the last 24 hours worldwide, there has been an increase of 130 cases and 31 deaths. And globally, altogether, since it started, there has been 80,304 cases and 2,946 deaths. Now, I do not believe those numbers could possibly be accurate. I find it a little strange that once China got a handle on censorship, the numbers didn't ever really increase very much. They seemed to slow down considerably, and like the number of deaths was around 2,000 when they started censoring everything. So it didn't increase very much at all. And I find that to be a little bit shady. But all we can do is depend on the numbers that are being reported currently. Now, with that being said, I would also like to point out that there also are probably thousands of cases that aren't even confirmed, that people aren't even aware of. They say the symptoms are mild, so you may not even know you're sick. But the fact is that if you take all of the cases that everyone has that hasn't even been confirmed, the percentage of death toll or death rate is probably much smaller, unless they're not counting deaths accurately. I mean, if they're saying somebody died of pneumonia, but they're not saying it's COVID-19, for example, then they might not count the pneumonia as part of the death, which would make sense if they can confirm that. But I have a feeling a lot of those deaths were just blown off as a cause of something else for obvious reasons. But so anyways, I personally do not think that it's anything that anybody should be panicking about. There are a lot more deaths from the flu. I know people don't want to hear that, but that's just the reality. We don't even notice the effect it has on the population every year from flus and viruses. So the odds of you getting it, it's probably pretty slim. But then because it's man-made, we don't know what to expect out of it, I think is part of the concern. And because it's new. And also because, well, when man manipulates anything, they tend to make it worse. So, anyways, it has some, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know how to use the right terminology, but basically they added something to the virus that makes it a lot more contagious and more adaptable. So that's, I think, why people are so worried about it. But the fact is, this is biological warfare, and it's designed to crush an economy. The globalists are trying to force us into a recession, and so they need to crush our economy and get us in a desperate situation so that we have to call on them for help, is basically the idea. This is what they do about every 100 years. Last time the Rothschilds did it with the stock market, took over the stock market, started the federal bank, and basically trapped everyone into a debt that couldn't be repaid through wars, disease, whatever it took, economic collapse, and then you no longer have control over your country. Their biggest struggle is the United States because, one, we always call bullshit on it, and two, we have the ability to fight back if they try to force their will on us. So this is another attempt by the globalists to force us into a recession. That's why the mainstream media is cheering for a recession. They want to see that happen. They're pretending like it's some dramatic thing because they want you to panic. Yes, it's not good. One life is too many. It's biological warfare. In my opinion, whoever the hell's behind releasing this should be exposed. Whoever's behind creating this as a weapon should be exposed, and something should be done about it. There should be, acts, I don't know, something, warfare acts that, it's a war crime. It should be considered a war crime. It should not be tolerated. I don't know what you do about it, except sanitize your house, sanitize yourself, try not to have a lot of contact with anybody or no contact. These days it's not too hard to avoid each other since they've got us all divided so severely that we don't have anybody to talk to anyways. And we're all hooked on our internet and our computer and our technology that, I don't know, I haven't seen anybody outside hardly at all for years. And anyways, so keep your distance from people for a little while. Wait for everything to pass. Try not to go in public. If you do go in public, get everything you need at once. Try to do it at a time when there's not a lot of people around. Sanitize everything you touch, to avoid passing anything that you might be carrying on, unwittingly. I know there's a lot of extreme measures we can take, but here in America, I just don't see people doing it that way. So, it's, I guess, your own personal choice. Do what you can to protect yourself and the people around you. And if we all just got up and sanitized our homes and our properties thoroughly and took extreme measures to avoid passing germs on to each other, I think it would be just fine. It's probably not going to go that way, and so we're probably going to get a lot of sick people. But I'm guessing from the way it looks, it's not going to be any worse than any other year of viruses and flus and things. So, just protect yourself and take care of your immune system. Eat healthy, things like that, But anyway, so those are your numbers. The president has just appointed $8.3 billion to help deal with the virus. And I don't know, I just pray to God that everybody gets it under control and that this is a short-lived problem. And there's some concerns that it'll come in waves and get worse with each wave. So don't let your guard down right away until they've got a vaccine or a cure or a treatment of some sort. I don't know, take care of yourself and stay healthy and have a great weekend. And just remember, you're listening to just one voice.